Welcome back to Lessons for Life. Tonight's lesson is something of a history lesson. We've got friend of the channel and friend of mine, Dave Kayani, with us, who has recently become an expert on the topic we've got for us tonight. What is that, Dave? What are we talking about?
Julian, firstly, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm an avid listener, and great work that you're doing. Really enjoy it. Having open and honest conversations. I am going to be talking a little bit about persecutions of an emerging faith. Certainly, the faith that I'm talking about in particular is the Bahai Faith, which is been around for around 175 years. So emerging is maybe a bit underplaying it somewhat, but really looking into the broader picture of people being persecuted for their beliefs. Now, whatever your belief may be, it always seems to be the case that people are persecuted. But just to rewind a little bit on that, if I may, obviously COVID has hit, and I used to run classes looking into history of, in particular, of the Bahai Faith, which I'm a member of. And I've never found history interesting. It's never been an interest of mine whatsoever. I would go to school, and in history lessons, I think the best thing to do is to rest my eyes, sleep. But I've realized that was foolish. That was foolish. You should always pay attention and always learn. So recently I've developed an interest partially out of the fact that I'm from Iran, but I was born and raised in the UK. And part of the reason I'm in the UK is because of the persecution that the Baha'is receive in Iran, as do other faiths and as do other countries persecute other people. Unfortunately, this has meant that I wasn't able to grow up in what would have been my native country. So I'm born and raised in the United Kingdom, which is, like any country, has its ups and downs.
Which is fine.
Which is fine. So yeah, it's great. I mean, the entire world, I've lived around in different places, in China, Honduras, LA, New York, moved around a bit, but really I wanted to learn a little bit more about who I was and where I was from. And something I've learned from you, actually, Julian, is this idea of real authenticity. How do we take something and really learn and grow from it? And it's actually from being authentic that we have these authentic conversations. And you and I have been friends for, since we were in our teens, for about 10 years now, I'd say. We've been friends.
It's a bit longer than that, but yes.
Well, give or take. Numbers, right? But anyway, so that's why during COVID, whilst I was running classes looking at the history of things, it made me, during this COVID period, it turned into every day I've been doing this.
Wow.
So we've had non-stop sessions. Now, for me, I grew up in a Baha'i family. So the Baha'i Faith is one of the major world religions, and the essential idea is that we believe in something called progressive revelation, where we believe that this source, God, whatever you want to call it, sends down different messengers, different people to speak to us at different times. And Baha'is believe Baha'u'llah to be the latest in a long line, which will continue. But the point we're talking about today is not to explain what the Baha'i Faith is per se. It's really going back to the history of this. Now, there's one book that's entitled The Dawnbreakers, which somebody in the years between 1887 and 1888 was asked by Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith, to go around and write a history of what's happened. And this history is what I find fascinating. And I have many friends that study it, regardless of whether they believe in the Baha'i Faith or not, they're atheists, doesn't matter what your background is. It's really, I'm trying to understand man's inhumanity to man, and then make a
class about it, yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't realize the book was written that long ago. I'm familiar with this book, The Dawnbreakers. You said it was written in 18 what? 18.
So the note, somebody by the name of Nabil was asked to go around and collate all the history, and he did that between 1887 and 1888. In 1932, these notes were put into book form, essentially.
But this book is not scripture; it's not authoritative in that sense. No, it's just a book written at around the time or shortly after the events, chronicling the history.
Yes, it is. But it's a book. These notes, who, as I say, Baha'is believe in Baha'u'llah to be the latest in a long line of manifestations, and he he read these notes, and actually some of them he put red lines through them and said, no, this is inaccurate, this is accurate. So it's we find it to be pretty spot on. There's a couple of errors in there. There's a couple of things that after his version, Baha'u'llah's version that he quoted, that got stolen actually. So we're working from
really.
Yeah, but that got stolen by people against the faith, and so we don't have the final version. But whether the facts are all the facts are 100% accurate, or there's small mistakes here or there, it's really this story that took place in Persia beginning in 1844, when the precursor of Baha'u'llah, someone who had the title of the Bab, meaning the gate in Arabic, he came and he prophesied the coming of Baha'u'llah, and also was a fulfillment, we believe, of various figures throughout religious history. But again, I don't want to go too much into the theology side of things today. So he came, but what was interesting is when he came and he declared his mission, he ended up eventually 6 years later being martyred, being hung up in front of 10,000 people and being shot by 750 bullets in a public execution. Now, the interesting thing for me, even that, let's put that to one side. We know obviously the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had to endure a lot of trials. So did His Holiness Christ, Moses, Zoroaster. Any prophet or any manifestation that's come has had these trials. But the interesting thing for me really is, who are these people that take this on, that follow them, whether you're looking at the early Christians or the Babis or the early Muslims, that end up being tortured for their faith, for believing in this idea, this ideology, where they go to the point of actually being tortured for it. And this goes to whatever you believe in, whether it's even, say, black rights, you're trying to champion the cause of black rights, or the slaves that had risen up against these things, people who are willing to give up their lives for an idea, for a belief. That's the thing that really I find very gripping. And this particular book, The Dawnbreakers, expounds upon a lot of these things. And actually, weirdly enough, strangely enough, I found that one of the chapters is about my great-great-granddad. So I didn't realize
that's in the family.
It's in the. So I didn't realize I had a link to this. Actually, it was only when going through it. But there are plenty of examples when the Bab declared his mission, who he was. The persecution of the Baha'i started, and there was at one point there was 20,000 Babis that were across Iran that were killed, that were martyred, they were shot, they were hacked into pieces. So a lot of suffering has taken place. But why some of these individuals would give up their lives, the one precious thing we have for this, is something that I find very interesting.
First comment of the night comes from Give Peace a Chance, and he's asking, is this the emerging Iranian faith? Well, it is a faith that emerged in Iran, but also in Iraq. A lot of the history was in Iraq, right?
A lot of the history was. Or
was that later? Was this early period mainly in Iran?
Well, actually, when Baha'u'llah declared his mission, he was actually in Baghdad at the time, and then he went further up into the Ottoman Empire, into Istanbul, Edirne, and then ended up in what's now the Holy Land, a place called Akka and Haifa. But it is an Iranian faith, just the same as Zoroastrianism is an Iranian, is a Persian faith, and it has its origins in Iran. But to say it's emerging is maybe inaccurate. I mean, yes, it is, of course, but there's about 7 or 8 million Baha'is across the world, and it's geographically the second most widespread faith. So you'll find Baha'is from all different backgrounds. But again, as I say, the thing that I'm really just for the thing I'd like to focus on really, and we can by all means talk about the Baha'i faith. That's not an issue, but it's just like, why are people giving up their lives for these various things? And that's and that for me is quite interesting to look at.
Do you think that willingness to give up one's life for a cause is a sign that that's a good cause? Because you could give up your life for many doctrines, and there's been martyrs for causes that we wouldn't want to follow.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
I think that doesn't represent in either way whether the cause is a good cause. There are plenty of causes that are clearly bad. There are plenty of ideologies that say killing yourself or killing other people is a positive thing. So I think you need to look at each cause individually. certainly with the Baha'i teachings, when you look at what Baha'u'llah taught, what the Bab taught, who I said was the forerunner of Baha'u'llah and a manifestation in his own right, what they taught, really, that their message is all about peace, is all about love, is all about the validity of the faith of Islam and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the validity of the faith of His Holiness Christ, of Moses. And really, to be a Baha'i, you can't be one without independently investigating these other faiths, understanding them, and realizing the incredible, glorious nature of the aforementioned prophets and manifestations that we have. So to me, no, certainly killing yourself or being killed doesn't mean it's a good cause.
Well, give peace a chance of saying people give up their lives for heroin, for example.
Very true. For Justin Bieber tickets, I'm sure, for all sorts. So giving up your life doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean it's a good cause.
But that does intrigue you, and you used the word martyrdom, and this figure, the Bab, that emerged with a message and a claim, he was martyred for it, meaning he was killed for his belief. Could he have saved his own life?
So in the Dawnbreakers, for example, in this book, there are various there are countless situations and things that you read about where it's more than obvious where he could have done. One of them being where he was put in a prison in the region of Iran known as Azerbaijan, up in the northwest, and he was in a prison called Marku, this prison where he was put because he wanted to meet with the king. The king was happy to meet with him, but the prime minister, by the name of Haji Mirza Agassi, he was a little bit worried that if the Bab met the king and the king became a Baha'i, what would happen? And in fact, at this time, we have a French philosopher who was in Iran. His name is A.L.M. Nicolas, and he had written that there was a period where in Persia they thought there was maybe around 1 million Babis, so they were followers of the Bab, and that Iran was actually going to switch, Persia was going to switch, a big change was happening. So they were very worried that these two would meet, so he was put in prison. And the prison warden, who wasn't a Babi, he didn't end up becoming a Babi, but he recounts this, he was very much against the Bab. His job was to keep the Bab concealed in the mountain, and lo and behold, one day he's out, he's walking along, and by a river, he hears this incredibly beautiful chanting. And in Arabic and in Farsi, you have incredible chanting voice. And he hears this, and he's so drawn to it, he goes to it, only to find out that it's the Bab. But of course, he's really angry because the prison wardens are meant to be looking after him, keeping him there. So he goes and he starts shouting with the first person and says, "Why did you let him out? What did you do? Blah, blah, blah." And they look at this guy like, what's wrong? What is he talking about? Maybe he didn't have his kebab. Maybe his baklava wasn't cooked for him the right way. He then goes to the next one, screams and shouts until he gets to the room where the Bab should have been, and says to the two guards outside and says, "What are you doing? How dare you let him out?" And all of a sudden he pauses and he sees the Bab and he freaks out and he says, You were just down there. You were down by the river. And the Bab says, "Absolutely. Don't think I can't be in two places at once. If I wanted to, I could get myself out of this prison." But that's not the point. That's not the point. People take sacrifice. Like if you were to look at Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or His Holiness Christ, or Moses, or Jesus, any of these enlightened beings, they had the chance to overcome that, to go past that.
How do you understand that example in the prison, where essentially a prisoner appeared outside the prison and then back inside the prison? Is it a miracle? Is it a symbolic story that we should get a message from? Is it both? What is it?
To me,
is it a magic trick?
It's a very good question you raised. To me, I understand it to be a miracle. However, who knows? Maybe it was a magic trick. Maybe it was something. And this is precisely why the Bab actually banned the Babis. So the Babis were the follower of the Bab who came before Baha'u'llah. When Baha'u'llah came, a lot of the Babis then became Baha'is. But these Babis, they were banned, they were forbidden by the Bab by talking about his miracles. The Bab said, "Don't mention my miracles. That's not the important thing." It's just like His Holiness Christ walking on water. That's not what was so amazing about Christ, that he can walk on water. Great, he can walk on water. How does that affect the world? It doesn't affect the world. Whereas the teachings of Christ, the example of Christ, that affects the world. So yes, I do believe it to be a miracle, but it's irrelevant of whether it was or it wasn't. Again, what's interesting is, why do people follow this? Why would someone be willing when asked to change their faith or change their thoughts, to go full steam ahead and say, actually, no, I believe in this and I'm willing to give my
because
life.
they saw the miracle.
For some people, it could be that.
For
some people, it could be that. But most people didn't see any miracles. They didn't meet the Bible. They just read his writings. And you have countless horrific tortures that take place, like molten lead being poured down the throats of people, people having holes cut out of their body, candles put in, being blown out through cannons, having cannonballs blown through their back, their ears chopped off, forced to eat them. I mean, the tortures were, I don't want to sicken the audience, but the tortures were horrific. But why did they do this? What is it about them that managed to get something and actually stand up for their faith? And what I put forth, I'm sorry, if you were going to ask a question.
No, I was going to go back to miracles, but keep going because I think you're flowing.
What I was going to put forth is that if you were in a restaurant, Julian, and I came and said to you, and I'd say I worked for MI5, and I said, Julian, the guy with the machine gun is going to come in and he's going to shoot everyone in the restaurant in 2 minutes. What would you do?
Well, this is like the psychopath test that we were having the other night. What do I believe him? Is he a reliable source?
If you believe him.
If I believe that someone's going to come in and shoot everyone in the restaurant
in 2 minutes, what would you do?
Am I on my own? Am I with my?
There's people in the restaurant.
I would prepare to try and hide everybody and say, "Come on, let's hide."
Right.
I assume.
Exactly. I would imagine you would get up. You would raise.
I would do something.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You would get up. You would raise that call and say, "Look, we need to get up. We need to do X, Y, and Z."
I'll probably say, "Guys, dinner's on me tonight." Oh, we got to go.
Yeah, but
thoughts there.
So to me, it seems like those people who are willing to give up their lives, who are willing to do anything in that moment, they know something that you and I don't know. They've cleaved some truth that we haven't. Either that or they're deranged, they're mental to give up their lives. Because in that moment, your primary concern, in the example of the machine gun, would be to do one thing and one thing only, to get everyone out, to get out yourself and get everyone out. Hopefully you'd relay the message to other people. Yeah. To get out, there's nothing more important. There's nothing more important. It doesn't matter about your parking fine or whatever. It doesn't matter, the fact that you're upset with this, that, and the other. You're concerned with one thing, because it becomes a life and death. And to me, I propose that these people are seeing something that you and I perhaps are not.
So these followers in Iran 170 years ago, 175 years ago, had this message that you're saying to them was life or death, to spread the message. It's that serious.
This is what I think, and why? What is the serious nature? If you analyze the state of the world now, if you were to analyze the state of the world now, yes, in many ways, the world's getting better. We live longer. We have the UN, which is far from perfect, but is a step forward in some degrees. We have mobile phones. Nando's is open. So in many ways the world is. But also, if you were to look at the moral decadence, the way society is today, the things that we're seeing, the races, you can look at various. If we were to look at the United States or England or any country, you can see the corruption through the politics, through the people, the society, the way we are. The world is in a downward decline. What people are valuing is, in my opinion, not making us the most noble beings that we can be. And we need to actually really realize how special each individual human is, and these gems that we have inside them, and polish them and bring them out. Because the world is going on a collision course with...
What if we don't? What's your worst case scenario?
Well, I think you can make your own mind up on that, but let's take the example of climate change, for example.
How dare you?
If that's true, okay, that's one thing, then we're heading on a course that isn't good. I believe it's David Attenborough who's got this film out at the moment, which is quite touching, saying that we need to act now, we need to stop now. But look at, I don't know if you've been on TikTok at all. If you go on TikTok, some of the things you'll see young teenage girls doing or guys doing, I don't think is conducive to the betterment of society. And I think it's dragging society down. People are growing up wanting to be a gangster, wanting to be a stripper, wanting to, all these things where you have brilliant potentials within these people to transform themselves, to transform the world, make the place better. And I think we're just going in a bad place. How close are we to nuclear war? Who knows? I don't know. May happen, may not happen. But you look at the First World War, how devastating that was. That was known as the Great War at the time. They didn't know about the Second World War. Then we had another Great War. Well, yeah, we had that, and there was nothing great about it. But we then had the Second World War, which was horrific. If a Third World War kicks off, I think you're going to look at the extermination of a large percentage of the planet.
Wow. I think Einstein said the Third World War will be fought with nuclear weapons and the Fourth World War will be with sticks and stones. We'll be back to square one. But if your faith has brought this new message, then why is the world going so badly, as you're putting it? We're in dire straits.
So just to be clear, I think the message of His Holiness Christ, of Moses, of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, all these messages are beautiful, but humanity is not listening to their teachers. People are either turning away from their own faiths and saying religion is nonsense, or if they are, a lot of these people are not really deepening themselves in their faith, understanding what's really happened in it. And Baha'u'llah, who's come, also adds to this message and speaks a lot more globally than any of the other faiths, because the world he inherited is more global. Not that the rest of them couldn't, but they haven't listened, Julian.
I think people are becoming more religious. The world is more religious now than it was 50 years ago. Whether you want to say it's more spiritual or not, I don't know. But for example, the Soviet Union, which controlled Azerbaijan and all those regions and was right up to the border with Iran, was by law an atheist state for almost 100 years. Turkey, which was the Ottoman Empire, which was the then caliphate, became an officially secular republic and really did away with religion and frowned upon it. But now, almost overnight, Turkey is religious again. They have an Islamist leader, Tayyip Erdogan. Putin is a very strong Orthodox Christian. Russia is harking back to its Christian identity. And across the Middle East and North Africa, Arab nationalism is pretty much finished, with the exception of Syria. And Islamist, with a small I, governments are popping up or have survived, for example, in Saudi Arabia. But Qatar is also a similarly Islamist state. These are the financially strong states that are in the pocket of the Western powers, and they are propagating a type of religiosity which has it's had a rebirth throughout the world. And even young people whose parents might have been secular or nominally religious will now say, I'm really religious, and it's a very strong identity these days. But are they adopting the identity without the spiritual teachings? You might have a point there, and I wonder why that is. If all these religions are so valid, and you've praised Jesus and Muhammad and others already, why is the message not carrying through? Or why are people not following it as they might have done in the past?
Is science good or bad?
Have we still got Dave?
Hello, can you hear me? I'm here.
Sound check. You're watching Lessons for Life. I think we've
Julian?
Frozen in time. I hope we still got Dave Kayani. He's talking about we said emerging Bahai Faith, but it's not really emerging. It's
hello, Julian. Hello. I'm not sure if we've lost Julian or you've lost me. Someone has indeed been lost. Hello? Not entirely sure who has been lost here, if it is myself or Julian. I will go with the assumption that
I think we're back. I think we're back. We lost you briefly.
Did we lose me or you?
I don't know if you heard my question. I lost everything. But I was asking you, why are people not getting the spiritual teachings of religion? If more people, I think more people are religious today. I think you've had a renaissance of religiosity, certainly throughout the Middle East, certainly in Turkey, and certainly in the Soviet Union and Russia. People have harked back to the Eastern Orthodox Church over there.
Julian, you can hear me, yes? Hello?
And we might have lost Dave. Go on, Dave. Yes, I've got you. Answer that question if you can.
So I think there's also other examples where you're seeing actually religion being. There was a survey recently in Iran, and people, it seems to be becoming more secular. People are turning away from religion. But let's even say that people.
Who did that survey?
I'm not entirely sure. Let's say that even if that survey is false, let's say you're 100% right. I don't contest that. Again, it's not about my question to you. Sorry, before we got cut off, is science good or bad?
Terrible. Well, it's boring, isn't it?
Exactly.
Obviously, it depends how you use it.
Exactly, and that's the point being made, that I think people turning to, if a country says we're Buddhists, we're Jainists, whatever, it's great to give yourself that title, but are you really doing it? How do you become that thing? To be a Christian means to be a follower of Christ. Mm-hmm. So a country that may call themselves Christians, are they really following the example of Christ? Are people who are Muslims who believe in Islam, submission to the will of God, are they really submitting to the will of God, or are they actually taking a version of it that's been sadly corrupted, twisted, distorted? And I think this is what happens, that over time, everything has its springtime, has its summer, its zenith, and then it has its autumn and its winter, to use the seasons as an analogy. And I think that a lot of what the world calls religion, and you make this distinction of religion and spirituality, what's interesting is, sorry, are you still with me, Jules?
Yeah, I'm just bringing up a comment. I'm with you. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. Go ahead.
So what's interesting really is the fact that I think a lot of these things, they're living the outer shell. They're living a shell of what that truth is. They're living an outer shell of that truth rather than the actual truth itself. Right. If people
if your survey from Iran is true,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Dave.
Yeah.
If people in Iran are becoming less religious, it will have been because they have for 40 years been forced to be religious. In the Soviet Union, where it's the opposite, where they were forced to be secular, they are rebelling against that. So I think you get this effect. And different places, it's at different points, at different periods of time. But you force something, people rebel against it. So throughout most of the world, where we went secular for a long time, people are rebelling back. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, where religion has been forced on them, I can understand why people would be looking for a more secular future.
Yeah, and that may be the case. I mean, I hope the people of Iran cleave onto Islam and really draw from the fruits of Islam. I do hope that that's the case. I'm not pro people leaving their faiths, but to me, you can call yourself. I mean, many people have called me an athlete. I have many sarcastic friends who have called me that, but just because they call me an athlete doesn't mean I'm fit. Doesn't mean I'm shape.
I noticed a few medals in the background.
Well, these were just the odd marathon that I may have completed.
Oh wow! 26 miles.
26.2 miles. Yeah. So again, so I have these medals, and I can say, look, wow. I'm an athlete. My current shape is far from being an athlete. Just because I ran some things in the past, I did things. Again, it's about the true form. It's about really getting to the essence. So we can call ourselves X, Y, and Z, but if we're not acting in that way, are you really that thing? I can call myself a train, but if I'm not being a train...
Isn't it dangerous to start talking about the true version of a religion, though?
So no. I mean, if you're standing on a railway track and not looking at a train coming behind you, yes. But I think really, I'm not about trying to create division and say it's like this, it's like that. I think we can all agree on some fundamental truths. And I'm not talking about some of the differences that people may argue, but fundamentally, should we be loving beings? I would argue that every religion says yes. Should we be kind? Should we be considerate? Should we be trying to work and see each other as brothers and sisters? Those are the spiritual teachings, the real teachings that we should cling on to. Now, doesn't matter if I pray in this way or that way. They're secondary things, I think. Whilst maybe they have import to some people, as Baha'u'llah says if religion becomes a cause of disunity, even, you're better off without it. Get rid of it. It's dead. It's completely dead. It's this unifying power that we're interested in. And it doesn't matter if you call yourself a Muslim, a Christian, or whatever it is. Essentially, are we trying to work towards the unification of the planet, of the world? Are we seeing each other truly as brothers and sisters, truly being forgiving, being patient, being kind, being loving, being loyal, but also taking action? Not being passive and saying, oh, I love everyone, it's okay. No, we must stand up. There are so many atrocities in the world. How do we fight towards cleaning up the world, essentially? And I think that's what we need to look at. So yes, there are countries that have perhaps gone back to religion, but as you say, religion and spirituality. Julian, what do you see as the difference between spirituality and religion?
Well, they're related, but the modern form of religiosity has come to mean someone who is outwardly religious, wears a hat, wears a uniform, wears a cross, or whatever it is. And spirituality, I think you could talk about piety. You could talk about being, some people say, God-fearing, or having taqwa, I think is the Arabic word, which probably translates as piety. But this doesn't mean very religious. It means someone with a deep, I think, spiritual connection with God. And as we've become more focused with the outward appearance, and also I think it relates to left brain, right brain type people. And stereotypically, and we've mentioned it on this channel before, the left-handed people use the right side of their brain, which is more the creative, abstract ideas side of the brain. And right-handed people use the left side of the brain, which is more rigid, straightforward, order. You've got the scientific, mathematical approach. And as we've seen even today with the government announcing that people that work in the arts will just have to find another job and you're going to have to retrain as a computer scientist, we're gearing up to be a robot type of population, and we're going to lose this essence, the indescribable thing. Spirituality, having taught religious education in school, I would say that spirituality is the things that you can't describe, the things that can't be put into words. It's all of that, and that is 50%, if not more than 50% of our existence, I think, or I think it's more important. But we've emphasized the so-called academic subjects, and I've mentioned it before, where the word trivia comes from. I often ask people, do you know the origin of the word trivia? If you're with me, Dave.
Not me.
Trivia meaning three. The three arts.
There's a slight
music,
delay,
art, and drama. Three. Trivia. That's all right. You got it.
Sure.
And the quadria were the four academic subjects, the sciences. Yeah, we're hearing you. We're hearing you well. So trivia became this negative thing, like, oh, it's not important. But really, the arts and the expressive practices and art forms were just as important as maths and science. So I think for some reason, whoever runs the world have this agenda to move away, push us away from spirituality, push us away from art, push us away from music and expressing ourselves, and make us very sort of binary, yes, no, on, off, black and white thinkers rather than free thinkers. I think that's happened in religion, and it's happened in education, and it's happened everywhere. It's endemic. So it's good that I've sensed you're pushing back against that.
Well, I mean,
but you're a creative person, and you think outside the box. That's why you've got a baby goose with medals in the background.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. I don't necessarily draw the divisions of religion and spirituality. I mean, it's semantics, really. When I speak of religion, I'm talking about spirituality, and maybe that's the term that should be used instead. But it's really that's real essence of what it is that's important, and that's what we should be clinging on to. And I think those people who gave their lives up, those people who became martyrs, and certainly if you look at the early Babis or even the Baha'is now there
must be a storm outside because we've got very bad internet connection. 33X is saying machine can never have art. Yeah, I would tend to agree.
Yep. Indeed. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Dave. Yeah, carry on. Any more questions? Yeah, sorry, just the delay. The internet's really bad tonight, and I apologise about that. If anyone else would like to ask a question, or you can even have the opportunity to jump on as we open it up for questions if you want to join, click on the link in the description. We've got 33X who's saying machine can never have art. He might be able to come on and tell us why. I happen to know that he is an artist. I think I hope that the type of people that stumble across this channel will be the creative, open-minded, expressive type of people. But I do think the other lot, I'm being very sort of binary here, have the upper hand. But you need both, Dave. And you said earlier on, does it matter how you pray? But for example, in your faith, do you have a particular way that you pray, or you can just pray however you want to express yourself?
There are prayers that are revealed, certainly, and you can pray as you want as well. But there are certainly prayer. There is a certain form to it. There is a direction. We face the Holy Land, just by Haifa in the Holy Land, to be specific. But again, the reason why a manifestation, the reason why His Holiness Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came to this earth wasn't to tell us to pray in this direction. That wasn't the main reason behind why he came, or why Christ hung on a cross. Wasn't to say, you should go to church on day X, whether you believe that to be the Saturday, the Sunday, or that wasn't the message. So what was the core message? And this is where I'm saying that we can maybe even agree to disagree on various things, or see the outer form of religion as we want, but really, unless we're behaving in that way that is bringing about love, that is bringing about unity, then, as Baha'u'llah says, if it's bringing disunity, get rid of it. It doesn't serve any purpose. And this is what I feel that people who really believe in their cause, and of course you can believe in a bad cause and do these things, but I think they are seeing a truth. They are seeing the desperate need for humanity today to really to be regenerated, to wake up, to really see that we are on a downward spiral in many ways. The way society is now is, I don't think the values of society, to me, and there are other people that will disagree, but certainly we seem to have lost ourselves in so many ways. There's so much depression amongst young people. There's so much, there are so many issues in the world, countless issues, that I don't think you can sort of duct tape all of these problems. You have to go back to the center. You have to go back to what is.
You said earlier on you've been to a lot of countries. Is there anywhere where you found this wasn't the case, or it's not as bad, or you found a society that you thought, well, hey, they've got this, they've got it right?
It's an old cliche. You'll find good and bad in every country. You really will do. And I can say, as when I lived in China, for example, as a foreigner, I found the Chinese people very kind and very loving and always willing to help. But then again, I found the same in Honduras, and believe it or not, in LA. Although in LA, of course, there is a big drive for materialism and fame, and sometimes you get people doing things that don't show the best side of them. But really, how do we transform ourselves? How do we transform society? So I wouldn't say there's one country that's more into it than not, really. That's not the way it is. I think
some of our more.
Sorry, Julian. I was just saying. I think every human has the desire to do good.
That's right.
And everyone believes they are doing good. The problem is, are they actually? And what is good? But
some of our more right-wing viewers, I know, will make the point that you'll never find peace in a multicultural society, and the societies with low crime rate are monolithic or homogenous, whatever the word is. They're all people of the one same race. Like in Japan, for example, very low crime rate. The people are united by a single language and culture, and probably religion as well, though there are a couple of religions in Japan. But there's one very strong identity that unites everyone, and the country seems to be doing very well. It's one of the most successful economies. They dealt with COVID-19 very well, I think, and they don't have much of a military, but they're not allowed to have one. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they didn't waste time militarizing anymore, and now they have this functioning society. I haven't been to Japan. That's just an impression I get from documentaries.
Yeah, well, from what I glean from documentaries, there's a lot of depression in Japan that goes untreated, and the marriage is falling desperately. People are. I don't think Japan is particularly necessarily a happy country. And when I say a happy country, there are some parts. I've spent some time in Senegal where everyone seems to be smiling and being happy. So sometimes the more poverty you have, I think, to measure a country by its economic growth isn't always a true indicator of how they're actually feeling, how their society is transforming. In Japan, you have lots of love hotels, for example, where you go and do X, Y, and Z. But of course, Japan is also lovely. Again, you have good and bad in each country. But I think, I think the key thing.
But you think Senegal's better? You said it. Senegal is better than Japan. You said it here tonight.
Exactly. Do not go to. I think what it comes down to, people having community values, family values, and that's the important thing. That's the thing.
Senegal is also quite monolithic, isn't it? Are the all Senegalese, or are there different tribes? Is there any trouble in Senegal in that sense?
I honestly don't know. I was there for a month in a very particular area. I'm in an orphanage, just focusing on that. So I didn't get a widespread understanding. Okay. But where I was seemed to be.
What religion were the people there?
Christian. Okay. Yeah. So we had So
maybe that's.
Well, they have Muslims as well, and they have a mixture. I don't put it down to the religion, but perhaps it's the way that they practice it. Perhaps that's the thing that. But the predominant religion in Senegal is Islam. But I was at the particular orphanage. Okay. It was a Christian orphanage, but the majority of the people there are Muslims, and I didn't notice any tension between them. Not to say that there isn't, but again, if they're taking in their faith, in their spirituality in essence, then that's what the important thing is. Just looking at the comments
in the chat, 33X is saying, yeah, I would have thought every country has a military. I found everyone smiling and happy in Kashmir despite living in dire poverty. And he's mentioning that Akon is from Senegal. And so is Patrick Vieira. Whoa. I think there is something to be said for the simple way of life. And I'm saddened to hear that there's a high rate of depression in Japan, but then maybe I can understand why.
Well, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Julian, I think there's a high rate of depression around the world. I think these countries that have less economic growth perhaps aren't. I mean, how does marketing work? We create a need in somebody to want something. If you're told that you're ugly, here you need products. You're fat, you need training, whatever it is. For me, it was like, all right, Dave, you're a model, you need to wear a mask to ugly yourself up a little bit. Whatever it is, you create that need, and that's what this rampant cancer of materialism that we have, the extreme of materialism, the force that we have, is making everyone feel like they don't have enough, that they're not good enough, they're not handsome enough, they're not funny enough, they're not achieving enough, they're not success. If you look at Instagram, what's most of Instagram filled with? People showing off their wealth and their cars and how much of a brilliant life they're having. How often do I go to restaurants where I see a group of 6 people, no more, because that's illegal, sitting around a table and they're all on their phone? And they're all taking pictures of the food, or they're taking, they're looking depressed, gloomy as heck. And I've seen this recently, a couple sitting down, barely talking to each other on the phone, but then it comes to the picture where they're both looking really excited to try and give out this impression that they are successful. And that's when you start turning to other individuals looking for them to validate your business. That's when it gets depressing. But that is the way you win in pounds. And
people would rather look happy than be happy.
Exactly. It's the image that you give off, as long as people think. Whereas deep down inside, it's even with suicide in men being such a high killer of men, hope-centered men. We don't talk about our feelings. We don't unravel things. We don't rap. We don't. Again, going back to authenticity, we stray away from authenticity, and you're better off creating this other reality and putting that out there.
It's so hard, Dave. It really is. And you mentioned it earlier on, and I took it as a big compliment about being authentic on here. But it's so hard when you've got a light and a camera and you're aware that other people are going to watch this. And if this channel stays up for years to come, people will watch it in 10 years. And it's hard to just look into a lens and just be you. But you've come on and done that tonight. I've put a ban on people coming onto this channel in masks, whether you're in a restaurant or not, because I think it was giving the green light to other people to come on with the cloak of anonymity and say something really hateful and feel that they're going to get away with it. But it was an interesting experiment to do, because if you do open the lines and say, right, come one, come all, say what you want to say, and we're not going to judge you for it, and you can wear a mask, you get some really hateful people. And they're out there. And if that hatred or that weirdness, I don't know what you want to call it, is in their heart, imagine what's going to happen if it comes out on the street rather than on a live stream. Owen Keeling is asking what he missed. Well, you've missed a great show, but you can watch the replay. We started off with Dave Kayani telling us about the origins of his faith and the precursor to that faith, which emerged in Iran 175 years ago. And Give Peace a Chance is advising us to give up the phone. And I happen to know that this chap has done away with his phone. He watches us on a tablet when he wants to go on the internet, but he's done away with the phone. And I think that's a good move. 33X is saying, no one cares what anyone thinks, for heck's sake. No one thinks. All right, whatever. Yeah, thinks.
I mean, if I were to rubbish 33X's comments right now, he might be upset. So maybe he does care what I think. Maybe he doesn't. And I think it's important not to be too caring. But we have a society where, look at how powerful TikTok is, Instagram is, the social medias, the socials, as they say. It's become everything. Really, for younger people, it has become absolutely everything. If you notice, if you're driving your car and you're in a queue, how often will someone in a line just cut in with your car? They'll cut in front of you. They don't care. Whereas in a normal line, if you're in a line in, say, a high street bakery, I won't mention the name. I don't even go to Greg's. If you're there in a line, you don't usually get someone jumping in front of you because there's no mask around it. You can see them for who they are, the actions. So the more authentic you are, the more you think.
Yeah, road rage. Road rage in a car. How many people are swearing out the window because they think they're not going to get a slap through the window? Or
on the internet, the people, the keyboard warriors that exist. So when you, whatever this mask, when you hide yourself, you get the lack of authenticity. You get crazy things being sent, being said. And so really what we need to do is we need to demask, as our friend said, give up the phone. I mean, sure, you don't necessarily need to literally give up your phone, but give up your attachment to the phone, or what 33X is saying, no one cares what people think. I mean, yes, in a sense you don't, but we also do. I care. When I walk through the street, I don't want people thinking I'm fat, my clothes are ugly, I smell. I do care. As much as I want to say I don't. And I think it's important we do care about what people think, but not to the point where we're being inauthentic to try and make them think something. We should be proud about what people think when we're being authentic. So when I'm being me, I want people to think I'm a nice person. I don't want everyone to I don't not give a damn about what people think. It's important to me that actually I'm treating people in the right fashion. But it's when we're authentic, that's the thing that we should care about. But we put on this mask, we put on this charade. And that's going back to the original topic we were talking about this persecution of people who believe in an idea. These people are being, I would argue, super authentic. Certainly looking at the lives of the Baha'is, where they're saying, this is what I am. And I know, and as 33X says, just to be clear which one we're talking about, then they're being so authentic, they're saying, this is what I am, even to the point where their lives are taken for it, that they care about transforming the world so much, and they believe in this message so much, that even if their lives are taken, they will represent it. And that's what we need to do. We need to be more vulnerable. We need to realize the only way we're going to change the world is by doing that.
Have you ever really respected someone for their authenticity, even though you disagreed with what they were saying?
So I'll tell you a story. There was a girl. Many stories start off that way. She was a very beautiful girl.
This is a true story.
It's a true story.
Okay.
True story. And I said to her, and no names will be mentioned, I said, Claire Richards.
Did you meet her in Greg's?
I said to her, look, every time I suggest hanging out, you don't seem to take me up on it. And she said, I'll be honest with you, I don't want any more friends, and I'd rather not say, yeah, let's hang out, and then not turn up. I don't feel like hanging out with anyone. Now, whilst my ego was a little bit hurt because we were
hanging out with her the other night.
Well, yeah. But so I appreciated that authenticity. I was like, you're being authentic. And I didn't like the answer because I wanted to hang out. But I was like, wow, I much prefer that. I absolutely prefer that because you know what you're going to get. So I think, or even people who
you know what you get.
Even racists who actually come out and say that they're racist and give their views of why they're racist. I respect that more than the person who smiles but is secretly racist. And I disagree with racism, obviously.
And what about the ones that say, how am I racist? What race is a Muslim? Get out on a technicality.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm not racist. I just take Muslims who are mostly of a different race to mine. 33X in the chat is actually not a close friend of Tommy Robinson, but an associate.
Okay.
I think they grew up in the same town. I've got to say, I'm loving the authentic note that we've struck upon tonight, and we didn't plan that, but it's a good starting point. And if people that disagree can at least be authentic with each other, I think you've got more chance of coming to some reasonable conclusion.
The Baha'i writings say that the spark of truth comes from the clash of different opinions. The spark of truth comes from the clash of different opinions. And again, that requires authenticity. So if 33X is an associate of Tommy Robinson, and he's from Luton, that's where I went and studied at university, in fact, an interesting town. If that's true, okay, cool. I don't automatically dislike 33X.
He might have heard you on the radio.
He may well have done. He might have heard me DJ, so who knows? Or he might have been involved in road rage with me in the car. Tommy. So, but again, the point of how is a car anonymous? Like, it's the person within the car. You're within a shell. You're protected by.
And you can speed off if you've got a quick car.
Yeah.
Exactly. In the chat, Owen Keeling is saying, I don't really care at the end of the day who wears one and who doesn't. I'm only interested in what makes people around me feel safer. It's the most common argument I hear from the mask police. Is the false feeling of security more important than the truth? Okay, so we've got on to the wearing of the mask. Do you wear it? Do you not? Let's say, for example, Owen Keeling doesn't think one should wear it. Is it important to make other people feel safe by wearing it? Are we pandering to their feelings?
Well, I think you've got to look at what effect does it have on you. You know, you should be careful not to offend anyone. I think it's really important. So if me wearing a mask is going to make Owen feel safer and it doesn't cause a lot of problems for me to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask. If Owen's saying he's going to feel safer if I strap an anvil to my head and you fire small fingers at my face, I probably wouldn't do that.
So he can feel better. Well, you know, it happens bit by bit.
Owen Keeling raises a good point. I think we've got to look at the overall what are the pros and cons, and it's this thing of trying not to offend, but also you have to live your life as well. You have to go forward. So if the mask is that much of an issue for Owen to wear it to make me feel safer, for example, then perhaps he shouldn't. I mean, we can ignore all the science, taking out whether it's good or bad, what the truth is, and we'll have different opinions on that. But really, I think we need to live in a world to try not to upset other people, but live our lives. And of course, you're going to upset people, whatever you do. I was on a Zoom call earlier on, and there were men and there were women. And to the men, I think I said, "So, Mr. Smith, what do you think?" To the woman, whose name was, let's say, Sarah Rachel's, I said, "Sarah, what do you think?" Because I couldn't say Miss Rachel's or Mrs. Rachel's or Dr. Rachel's.
Oh, you can't. It's Ms. It's Ms.
Well, this is the thing. So
it's ma'am.
You can choose to take offence from anything. It's up to you. How many people? I mean, and the topic of racism is maybe one that we should discuss at a future date. But there are people who love being offended. If you take the cause of feminism, for example.
Well, lest you be offended.
I think to offend anyone. I think if you take the cause of feminism, I think feminism is wonderful, is brilliant. The world will not succeed, will not flourish as much without women having their equal rights. But if you take feminism to the extreme of anything I say, if I see you and a female friend first and I give you a hug before saying hello to her and she says, right, you're sexist, you can call anything. And I think you've got to, unfortunately, you'll always offend someone. You can always offend someone, but really, you've got to think about what you do. We have an interesting. Sorry, Julian. This is your bit, but what about the feelings of animals?
The mask one. Oh, feeling of animals. Yeah. From Give Peace. Yeah. What about the feelings of animals?
Incredibly important. Arguably more so. In fact, Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Bahai Faith, says that we should be kinder to animals, even arguably than humans, because they can't defend themselves. I'm not saying we should be kind to humans, but so much should animals be elevated. You should kindness to everything.
That's interesting. I've often sort of thought that the stereotype of the British is that they care more about animals than they do for people. You know, you stick on a charity for animals, it will receive more donations than Save the Children, for example. But like you say, maybe that is because animals are perceived as innocent. Not that children aren't, but children are more innocent than adults, for example. So women and children first. But then is that the old-fashioned way? Am I being sexist or ageist to say that?
When you look at an
bottom
animal,
line is respect for all life, right?
Absolutely. But we usually, when we look at an animal, if an animal comes and takes a dump on your carpet, you say, "Oh, it's a dog." You give it a pass. You know, if it ends up barking loud and waking you up at night, it's a dog.
You blame the dog.
You let it. Well, I've blamed the dog in the past, yeah, but you let it go because it's a dog. Whereas with humans, for some reason, if somebody does something bad, if 33X comes to my house, for example, and is just a bit rude to me, I don't look at it and think 33X is a nice guy. I assume it's a guy. Is a nice human, usually. Now they've acted in a way that isn't nice. my ego gets offended, rather than thinking, well, maybe they've had a terrible day. Maybe something's happened. We need to look more compassionately to people.
All over the carpet. Yeah.
But again, the way you view anything is key.
Yeah,
unless you're viewing through the lens of love, then you have a problem. And you can recognize people's bad actions.
And that's the problem.
You can recognize the bad actions, but view with love. That's what I say. I'm not sure if we've lost Julian or Julian has lost me. Not entirely sure. If anyone leaves a comment now, I'll know that I'm live as opposed to Julian being live, because I'll get the comment. But I assume the server's with him. Julian.
Yeah. Dave, we've reached an hour. Give me your closing. Come up, and you mentioned racism, so take your pick of those three. What direction shall we go with this?
My closing, if you're asking for my closing statement, sorry, Julian, it froze at my end. I didn't get to hear what you said, but I think I'm going to end with this: be kinder than necessary. In any situation, be kinder than necessary. That's what I'm going to end with.
Superb. Dave, you've been much kinder than necessary. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm sorry about the internet. There's some things that are out of our hands, but we will do this all again soon. It's been Lessons for Life. That was Dave Kayani. We were here.